This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. A discussion on Asian Longhorned Ticks with Justin Smith, Kansas Animal Health Commissioner, and A.J. Tarpoff, K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian, begins today's show. Ed Brokesh and Madison Sultz from K-State's Department of Biological and Agricultural Engineering continue the show with reminders about roadway safety, as many parts of the state are in harvest. Ending the show is K-State horticulture agent from the Meadowlark District, Laura Phillips, as she explains 4 components to establishing and sustaining a successful community garden. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show discussing Asian Longhorned Ticks with Kansas Animal Health Commissioner Justin Smith and K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian A.J. Tarpoff. Justin, A.J., thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yep, always a pleasure.
Justin, as you're with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, why are we talking about this tick today?
Yeah, Shelby, this is honestly, we've been visiting about this tick, but what brought it really to light now is that we did identify, or Kansas identified their first tick presence here in the state of Kansas last week. This was a tick that was found in Franklin County, frankly, on a dog through a project or through a program that KDHE manages as far as a passive surveillance program. So this tick was actually submitted by a veterinarian that took it off of a dog. And lo and behold, it ended up being confirmed and identified as the Asian Longhorned Tick. So this is the first indication that we have it here in the state of Kansas.
Is this something that the KDA and KDHE are working together on?
Most definitely. So again, the program that found it was theirs, but we're working together and collaborative as far as putting information out on this tick, giving situational updates. There is some human health component to this as well. But yeah, it is something we're working collaboratively with them on.
Is this tick something you feel a lot of concern about, Justin, right now, or just really making people aware?
You know, it's more now making people aware. It frankly, as it's moved across the United States, again, it was back in the eastern states, early on, and as it's moved across those states, it's not something that we didn't expect. We knew that at some point in time we were probably going to be subjected to it, just based on the environment that we have in the eastern part of the state. So not unexpected, just something to be aware of, to be cautious of, and making people aware that we do have it here in the state now, or at least one tick in the state now.
Are there any identifiable things about the Asian Longhorned Tick that sets it apart from the different other ticks we've talked about in Kansas?
Sure. So I think, and AJ definitely will have the opportunity to provide more information on this. But, one of the unique things about this is that I've heard it described as a swarming tick, so that there'll be hives or groupings of this tick. And so when you find one, typically you will find a fairly large number of these. They report from back east that these animals will be covered in ticks, up to hundreds to maybe 1,000 ticks at any one time. But I think the other one is it's really unique. And again, AJ can elaborate on this, is this tick has the ability to reproduce without a sexual partner. And so all of the populations we're finding to date are all female ticks. And so it does have the ability to continue to reproduce without mating.
And AJ, Justin mentioned mostly the eastern part of the state. So is it all Kansas keeping an eye on, or are there certain parts that maybe should pay a little bit more attention?
Yeah, I personally, I think it's good for all livestock producers, all animal owners, and just people in general to be stay vigilant and keep an eye out for different types of tick populations that we may not have seen, or if something seems out of place. I think that's always an important place to start. But this truly is this Asian Longhorned Tick. A lot of the biologists, the entomologists have done some modeling on what types of environment that this tick can live and survive and thrive in. Now, Kansas is on the outermost edge. It's really found a home in areas of the Ozarks and Arkansas, down a little bit further east. It's not thriving on the coast. It's not thriving in dry or arid environments. And one good thing that we have culturally here in Kansas is that the practice of burning. So with our burning of the Flint Hills and the native tallgrass pastures, that's a pretty good stop barrier for preventing some of the spread west. as well as changing environment where we get a little bit more arid. So the bigger concern is that this is a regionality. So folks and producers and anybody listening on the eastern side, most importantly, the southeastern part of the state, be diligent, keep your eyes open, and if you see some of those things or see something that looks abnormal when it comes to tick populations, those are the ones to keep an eye out. Because unfortunately, this tick by itself is very nondescript. It's just a little brown tick. It does not have any big distinguishing characteristics like some of our other tick species. So it's just a little brown tick. And so just looking at it visually, even I would have difficulty trying to recognize it versus some of our other immature ticks that are out there.
And this was in New Jersey in 2017. And so moving for 8 years, making it to Kansas seems fast, but is that actually the case?
So it is. When you look at the big picture, this tick has had the ability to spread rapidly through the eastern part of the United States. And that's namely, like Justin mentioned, the ability to spread asexually, to be able to have one female tick can develop over a couple of years a brand new population in a new area. It is a three-host tick, so an egg, it hatches. That little larva has to feed on a host and then fall off, and then it molts, and then it feeds on another one, becomes a nymph. So it has to feed 3 different times before it becomes an adult to lay eggs. So it does take time for those adults to happen in a new area. And again, usually when we see them, we see pockets of a larger population, not spread evenly through an entire region. These ticks, just like other ticks, will be not evenly distributed on the landscape, but it'll be where hosts are, where large mammals are. So if you think about it, those of us that are hunters and think about white-tailed deer habitat, some of those transition zones at the edge of field edges with heavier brush, large numbers of cedar trees. Things where we'll have concentration of some of those larger mammals is where we're going to see more of these tick species.
Is there any special disease concern for the Asian longhorned tick?
Yes, there is, specifically for cattle producers. So the number one concern with the spread of this tick is, yes, large numbers of ticks could cause blood loss and things like that on individual animals, reducing performance, reducing growth. But the bigger concern is this Asian longhorned tick is a vector, is the spread and carrier of a disease called Theileria. This Theileria is a blood disease that impacts cattle. It does cause anemia, very similar to another blood-borne disease called anaplasmosis that a lot of producers are already very familiar with throughout Kansas. So Theileria looks very similar, causes anemia, causes a lot of the same symptoms. The only difference is it can also cause disease in young calves as well as mature animals, where anaplasmosis we only consider it a cause of disease for older animals. So if you start seeing some very strange symptoms, non-responsive to treatment, younger animals in particular having issues, this is something to keep in mind, is that issue with Theileria. There is a test available at the Kansas State Diagnostic Lab. Your veterinarian could be able to pull some blood samples to be able to help with that. If an animal does succumb to this disease, again, they can test that through necropsy. They can be able to find and diagnose that concern. Theileria by itself is not brand new to Kansas. It has been diagnosed actually in imported animals from the east. So we've been finding it in stocker animals, a few imported cows. So the disease itself is not new, but the ability of it to be transmitted is with the introduction of this tick. So that's the only thing that has changed. This is not doom and gloom. This is not the boogeyman out to get anybody, but it's just to be aware and be diligent. Keep your eyes peeled. We have work with your veterinarian. We have good tick control measures and practices. Continue our cultural practices of burning, making sure that if you do have ticks, again, we have plenty of American dog ticks and Lone Star ticks and a lot of other ticks throughout the state. So stay diligent with our tick control, our burning practices, our grazing management, and we should be in a pretty good position if there is a concern to be able to stay on top of it.
Justin, if someone is concerned that they have Asian longhorn ticks in their operation, what should they do?
So this is considered a reportable condition or a reportable tick here in the state of Kansas. And so if they have concerns or suspicions, highly recommend that they contact their veterinarian and report that to them, and then their veterinarian can work through the processes with us. If they don't have a veterinarian or if they want to, they can call us directly, get a hold of our field folks, get a hold of us here at the office, and we'll guide through that and work through that process.
AJ, for your beef producers, what's your recommendation?
For beef producers is, just keep an eye out, right? When there are things that are abnormal, that's when you reach out to your local veterinarian. That's a part of the valid veterinary client-patient relationship that producers have with their local veterinarian, that if something looks abnormal, you let them know. To be able to take the proper steps, to be prudent, go through step 1, step 2, step 3, make sure that we're caring for the utmost of our animals that are under our care. So for me, it's always stay vigilant. It's good to be aware of some of these things. Keep it in the back of your mind. If you see something that looks abnormal, that's when you let your local vet know.
AJ, Justin, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
No problem. Thank you for the opportunity.
That was K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian AJ Tarpoff, and he was joined by Kansas Animal Health Commissioner Justin Smith as they discussed Asian Longhorned Ticks. If you would like to see a recent news release on Asian Longhorned Ticks, you can do so by going to the Kansas Department of Agriculture's website, which is agriculture.ks.gov. Once again, that is agriculture.ks.gov. They do have a news release titled Asian Longhorned Tick Identified in Kansas. I will link it in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing roadway safety, especially as it is harvest for many around the state. And then to talk about it, we're joined by K-State Assistant Professor in the Department of Biological and Agricultural Engineering, Ed Brokesh, and Graduate Research Assistant in Biological and Agricultural Engineering, Madison Sultz. Ed and Madison, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Opportunity.
Glad to be here.
As we're discussing roadway crashes, what's the most common type when it comes to farm equipment?
Well, we've been doing some research, and Madison has pulled the crash data for the last 10 years for Kansas. And the crash data we've pulled has been related to agricultural equipment and other vehicle crashes in the state of Kansas. And we were expecting to see left turn crashes being the main thing, but it turns out that rear end crashes are more common than the left hand turn crashes. And Madison's got some interesting details. I'll turn it over to her. She can kind of explain this a little better than I can because she's been deep in the numbers.
Yeah, so like Dr. Brokesh said, rear end collisions are our number one collision type with farm equipment in Kansas. So that's really due to speed differential, especially on highways. You get a car going 70 miles per hour versus a piece of equipment that's going maximum 25 miles per hour. You catch up to that piece of farm equipment really quickly. It's also due to a lack of awareness from both the farmer perspective and from other drivers on the road. So really got to make sure that we are aware of everybody on the roadway and following traffic laws. Another piece is the overuse of SMVs. So really, whenever you see an SMV or something that could potentially be a piece of equipment in front of you, go ahead and slow down. There's not a challenge of slowing down. It's not overall going to affect you that much. So just go ahead and slow down.
Madison, you say SMV. What is an SMV?
SMVs are slow-moving vehicle emblems. They're the bright orange signs that are attached typically to the back of a piece of equipment or their implement that they're pulling.
And a lot of times we know those pieces of equipment and implements are going in and out of fields. And so is there a need for them to maybe get cleaned every once in a while as well?
Yeah, so it's really important to make sure that all of your lighting, marking, and your SMVs are visible. Make sure they're clean, whether that's taking your hand and dusting it off before you leave your house, the field, whether you're moving from field to field or leaving the house to go to the field and then coming home from the field. Make sure that those are clean, or even a baby wipe, keeping it in your cab and make sure you're wiping it off would be beneficial.
SMVs have been around for a long time, and farm equipment as a whole is pretty durable and stays around for a long time. But the SMV will fade over time. And as a farmer, just as you would repair a disc that you broke a disc blade or lost a shovel on a field cultivator, you need to repair your SMVs or any other of the lighting and marking on your ag equipment. And so if you've got an old SMV that's broken, faded out, spend the few bucks at the local farm supply and buy a new one and stick it on there. It'll save you, may save your life, may save somebody else's life, but keep those things repaired as well.
Is there an appropriate or proper location to place those SMV emblems on an implement or equipment?
Yes, in a very visible location on the rear of the machine. Most of the equipment will have a mounting bracket for it. So just make sure and use that mounting bracket as a guide, and make sure that what you're putting the SMV on will move at a slow rate. Concrete blocks, fences, gates, and vans are not slow-moving vehicles. The first does not move, and the second moves faster than a slow-moving vehicle. So keep it on ag equipment and stuff that truly moves slowly.
And Ed, while we're chatting with you, thinking about being on the road and in the field, are there differences for what lighting might be necessary for each aspect?
Oh, most definitely. When you are pulling out of the field, turn off your field lights and turn on your road lights. There's usually a different setting on your lighting instrument panel, because the field lights are specifically for field use, and they will shine lights in places that you really don't need it for on the road, as well as it will blind other drivers on the road. And so it is really important to use the right lights for the right application. You certainly wouldn't want to use road lights in the field. Don't use your field lights on the road.
As we're thinking about safety for farmers and ranchers and other people on the road around this machinery, what time of day do these crashes commonly occur?
Most crashes happen in afternoon daylight hours in really no adverse conditions, meaning there's no rain, there's no snow. They all happen kind of in those rush hour times. So make sure that we're kind of using our brain a little bit to think about, hey, it's 5 o'clock. A lot of cars are going to be on the highway, on the roads. Maybe let's wait just even 15, 20 minutes, do something else for a little bit to make sure that those roads are clear.
What are some things that then farmers should keep in mind when they are getting on the road?
Make sure that we're still following traffic laws just like you would in a normal vehicle. Make sure we're stopping at stop signs. Make sure we're using our blinkers whenever possible. We know that your view can sometimes be limited, but make sure we still have our head on a swivel, making sure we're driving defensively and really preventing crashes wherever we can.
Is there something that farmers can do to maybe communicate with neighbors who aren't involved in agriculture about, here are some safety things that are also important for our safety on the road?
Yeah, I think even the small communication of, hey, I drive equipment that's much, much larger than your vehicle. I can't always get off the road to let you pass. So be patient. I'm not always going a long ways. It'll just be a couple miles at the most, probably. So let's just stay behind me for just a little bit. Overall, it's not going to shave too much time off of your commute.
Is it also a good reminder to remember that sometimes field entrances just kind of appear, it seems like, in the middle of the road?
Field entrances can sometimes be very hard to see. So as other drivers, make sure we're looking around for field entrances wherever they are, but also thinking about don't pass in no passing zones. Even if it is a slow moving vehicle, the law is still the law. Yeah, and make sure that as the farmer or the equipment operator, we are indicating that we are going into that field. As a driver behind you, I have no idea if that's your field or not. We're in Kansas. There's fields everywhere, right? So just making sure that we are properly indicating that that's where we're going to go.
Do you think there's an opportunity for some outreach and education when it comes to improving roadway safety and hopefully reducing roadway crashes?
I know that KDOT and Kansas Highway Patrol have put out a lot of social media posts, and especially recently, as June, July, and October are our most common months for crashes involving ag equipment. So there's definitely more that we could do there, kind of just making it aware that this is a huge problem right now, and it has been for the last 10 years. At least that's all that we've monitored. So it's going to continue to be a problem in the future. But the more education and the more outreach that we can do, which is our goal, the better that we can all be.
Ed, do you have any other reminders?
The main thing is to understand that if you are in a passenger vehicle, small pickup, and you have a collision with a piece of ag equipment, you are going to take the worst of it. We were surprised in our research that the rear end crashes were the most severe, where people were running into the back of a piece of equipment, and there's a lot of injuries and worse. The left-hand turn crashes, we expected to have a fair amount of injuries and worse, and they were not as often as the rear end crashes and fewer injuries in those. I think some of this is drivers as a whole need to be paying attention when they're on the road and traveling at high speeds, and leave that smartphone over there in the dash face down and leave it alone, because the rear end crashes seem to be more predominant. And when you think about it, that's a inattentive driver type thing that probably had some impact on that crash. Farmers have old equipment that may not have the proper lighting and marking, but the brand new ag equipment has all the proper stuff. It's visible. So there's some responsibility on the people on the road to make sure that they're paying attention to what's going on. And I will also say farmers need to also be thinking about it. If they've got an older piece of equipment that doesn't have the proper lighting and marking, go to the local farm supply. There's add-on stuff so that you have the proper lighting and marking so that you can be seen, because the best thing to do is to avoid crashes as much as you possibly can. And some of it's having the proper equipment, some of it's the defensive driving, and of course we're trying to do the education part so that everybody knows what's going on.
That was K-State Assistant Professor in the Department of Biological and Agricultural Engineering, Ed Brokesh, and Graduate Research Assistant in Biological and Agricultural Engineering, Madison Sultz. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. The October K-State Garden Hour explores the evolution of community gardens, common pitfalls to avoid, and offers guidance on establishing and sustaining a successful garden. K-State Extension Horticulture Agent for the Meadowlark District, Laura Phillips, says that community gardens provide a number of benefits, and she discusses 4 components to successful community gardens.
It serves as this non-commercial third space. It's a place to gather, even if you don't have extra spending money outside of the home and outside of school or work. It provides social capital, meaning that it helps increase your network of people. It has all kinds of positive behavioral impacts, from eating better, increased physical activity, mobility improvements, and it has positive environmental impacts between providing space for pollinators. It also helps your mental health. I know a lot of people who they're so excited to get home and go to their garden because that is a place that's very grounding for them. It's very soothing. They get to release the stress of the day and get back in touch with nature. And many community gardens are also a place where you make friends and you bond and you feel closer to your community. I'm going to talk about 4 components to successful community gardens. First is motivated participants and community interest. Second is good communication. And when I say this, I mean communication with the people who are gardening, with the public, and with your partners or sponsors or support networks. Land, and specifically land that will not get taken away and that has access to water. And then funding and resources. You need tools, you need seeds, you need maintenance, who's going to pay for the water. So the first thing, motivate. You want to build your community gardens around your community's interest. Whether this is through a needs survey or getting community input, that bottom-up approach can be really, really essential. Next, communicating, establishing your communication methods and your expectations and your rules. You want to make sure that you have a way to communicate within your group, with the public, with your supporters, your sponsors, your partners, so that everything is really transparent. This also includes making sure there's avenues for feedback and transparency within the decision-making process. This also includes making sure you don't have 15 different communication mediums, because messages will get lost. People won't know where to look for info. Next, land. You really want to choose a place that is optimal in terms of access, in terms of the plant growing conditions, and in terms of the ability for gardeners to get there. And when it comes to those site conditions, you can use the Kansas Garden Guide. It has a lot of great information on choosing the best place, environmentally, climate-wise, for a garden. And then when you're thinking about the public access, think about, is there public transit? Is there a bus stop nearby? Is there parking? Is it next to a heavy trafficked area? Or are there sidewalks? Is it more of a pedestrian area? How visible is my garden from the street? People are going to see it and be interested. And then your resources and your funding. So that's, again, where you want to plan in advance. Use that budget worksheet from North Carolina and make sure you plan out your initial year and also your subsequent years so that you're not in for a surprise when you realize, oh man, it's going to cost this much money to sustain my garden year to year. You know, okay, this is what to expect. This is where we're going to get the funding. This is how we're going to make it work. And start networking early. It's easier to bring people in during that initial planning phase because there's usually a lot more excitement and motivation about ideas, and it can be harder once you've already established to be able to bring in some of those partners and those networks, gardeners and non-gardeners alike, because you're going to have people who have different skill sets besides just gardening, people who can fix your fences, people who can lay a sidewalk, people who can write grants, people who can organize a fundraiser. None of us have all of those skills, so making sure that you partner with gardeners and non-gardeners. Another great resource is the K-State landing page for information about community gardens. This links to a lot of resources. This has information on community gardens that might be in your area, and it's got some videos with instructional information on community gardens that you can use as well.
That's Laura Phillips, K-State Extension Horticulture Agent for the Meadowlark District, with information on establishing successful community gardens. To listen to the full webinar, search for K-State Garden Hour and click on Most Recent Webinars. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.